Welcome back to our lessons in theology. I'm Marvin Cook here as a part of Yourccchurch. We're going to be covering an interesting topic over the next few weeks. It's going to be quite a few weeks, in fact, but we're going to be discussing the book of Revelation and some of the major aspects in Revelation. So before we get too far into this, I just want to take time this first session to talk about a couple key things that we have to lay out before we discuss anything pertaining to Revelation. And the first thing is the idea of prophecy. Because obviously Revelation deals with a lot of images and pictures and stuff like that, and a lot of it is seen in the Old Testament, things that depict or speak out to Revelation. So I want to just quote a professor I had in Bible college, that what he said about prophecy. You see, prophecy, people oftentimes, especially in our day and hour, they get caught up in the charismatic movement, and they come to church seeking for a prophetic word over their life or something. But we got to understand, prophecy is, there's two aspects to prophecy. It's kind of like a two-headed coin. Prophecy, first and foremost, is speaking things into existence that haven't yet happened. That is more or less what they see foretelling. Okay, so that's kind of what people like to think of when they talk about prophecy. I know there's been some prophecies given about Christ, prophecies given in our modern age of things that eventually came to pass and stuff, and that's great and all. And when we talk about Revelation, there are prophecies for sure that were spoken into existence years ago that are going to be applying to Revelation. But the other side of prophecy, which people oftentimes overlook, is the more applicable side of it. And prophecy is not just speaking things in existence that haven't happened, but it's also speaking to things that are a known fact to. It's kind of forth-telling. So, for example, yesterday I was observing my brother. We were at dinner, and he was talking to my nephew and my niece because they were fighting with each other, and play wrestling. And my brother shouted out to one of them and said to my nephew, he said, "If you don't stop picking on your sister, you're gonna get hurt." Sure enough, within about 10 seconds, her hand goes flying through the air, and he starts crying because he got hit in the face. Was my brother prophesying? No, he just from experience, he knew what was going to happen because of the train of events. So when we talk about prophecy, there's also an aspect of forthtelling where things have happened over and over, and you're speaking things into existence that you know are going to happen because they've happened before. So when you talk about prophecy, there's the two-sided coin to that. So you've got to keep that in mind when we're talking about Revelation. Another thing that we need to understand about Revelation is the term revelation itself. Now, I know if you've ever watched the movie based on the story of Wyatt Earp, it's called Tombstone. It opens up with the guy talking about in the book of Revelations. Technically, it's the book of Revelation because Revelation is a vision or something foreseen that has yet to happen. It's kind of like a prophecy. And when John was on the Isle of Patmos and he saw this revelation, it was one continuous dream or vision he saw of everything that was to come to pass. So when we're talking about Revelation, we're talking about something that's revealed or been made known that was previously unknown. It's much like in our modern day, something to equate to it is whenever two individuals are pregnant and they're going to reveal to the family whether it's a boy or a girl that they're having. Now, if you're out there and you're one of these people that, well, there is no such thing as boy or girl or male or female, just ignore me for a minute then, all right? Because the fact is, they're revealing to the family what the sex of the child is. And they're giving information to others that don't have a clue about it. So when John was given a revelation of things to come, we have to understand he was, first and foremost, a product of his time. He was set in ancient Jerusalem or Rome, wherever he was at. He was the Isle of Patmos, which is right outside of Rome, I believe. But he was there getting information about a time years in advance, a time where they didn't have technology, a time where they didn't have planes or helicopters or bombs or nuclear warfare or guns even. He lived in a time where he was seeing visions of things that were to come that he didn't entirely understand, so he described them to the best of his ability with what he knew. So when we talk about this term revelation, we're talking about seeing something without having known it to exist. So we got to take that into consideration. And then the last thing we need to talk about is this term allegory. And you might say, where in the world does the term allegory come from? We understand prophecy, we understand the term revelation, but what are you talking about allegory? Well, allegory is more or less like a story being told that symbolizes something else. We see it in modern times. I know C.S. Lewis did the Chronicles of Narnia. That's more or less an allegory symbolizing a story of the gospel. Those who are acquainted with religious literature and stuff knows the Pilgrim's Progress is a story about a gentleman who goes, a Christian who goes on this journey of learning, where the gospel is pretty much explained through images or storytelling, pretty much. Well, we have an illustration of that in Revelation. You say, where's your proof to that? Well, it tells us in Galatians chapter 4:24 that there are things that were given to us as an allegory or as a representation. The Scripture itself, the times they lived in, the apostles, the disciples, whatever you want to call them, at the time they were given instruction on what allegories were. And so they weren't. It's not a term that's unknown to them. It's not a term that they were unfamiliar with. They even explicitly stated, Paul did in Galatians 4, that, hey, some of the things that were given to us in story form as an illustration, not to be taken literal, or sometimes it is literal, it's just figurative in its explanation. If you have a pastor at home and you're out there and you're a Christian, you have a pastor, you know they use stories all the time to convey a point. If you've never been to church, you probably know when you go to a movie theater or something like that, there's movies that try to bring across certain ideas or thoughts through their movie. And it's illustrating certain points or aspects to try and get you involved or get you captivated by what they're saying. And so when we're talking about the book of Revelation and things to come, we've got to be able to understand first and foremost what all is being utilized to convey this message. And then, of course, we're talking theology here, so from the Pentecostal Church of God standpoint, what the Yourccchurch Church is a part of, we're going to probably be focusing mainly on the aspects of Revelation and end times from a premillennialist, dispensationalist viewpoint. Okay, you don't have to memorize all those words or know what they're talking about. It's just an idea that was developed from Daniel's prophecy of the 70 weeks. A man by the name of C.I. Scofield, along with another man by the name of Charles Larkin, a man by the name of Dake, and John Darby all got together, and they had this idea of how Daniel's 70 weeks played out. They actually added it up historically and what it's in the Bible, and they set up a model for how the end times chronologically were going to happen. So as we're talking about these things in the Bible, you're probably going to hear references to it, but I'm not going to avoid these other viewpoints. You know, there's obviously the historical standpoint, the preterist view, the futurist view, all these things that we're going to be bringing out. There's even the all-millennialist view. I'm probably going to be touching base on a few of those thoughts and processes, but for the most part, you're probably going to hear a lot from the premillennialist, dispensationalist viewpoint, which is what most mainline evangelical Christians hold to nowadays. So over the next few weeks, just tune in, make sure you're paying attention, and understand that we are not bigots in our viewpoint of things. We're just trying to get you as much information and understanding as you possibly can get.